Folks, first of all, welcome to SaaS Talks number 4, and welcome Aneesh to this session as well. What I will do, as I do in every session, is to give a quick background to the series and the format, and then introduce you in a minute, Aneesh. Not that you need any introduction, but I still will do that. This is a series that we do once every 2 weeks. And the intent is to choose a micro topic in SaaS. These are not meant to be like broad topic of how do you build a SaaS company. These are not meant to be a rags to riches story. These are meant to be sort of picking a very specific topic. And essentially the intent is to have practitioners who have been through those situations before. Number 2 is that it is not meant to be just a panel discussion. This is meant to be an open discussion. Of course, we cannot have 40, 50 people in an open format, which is why we have some people on the video, whereas other people are actually not on the video. But the intent is that the first 10 to 12 minutes, I will be asking questions to the anchor guest, and in that process also introducing the topic that we want to cover today. And thereafter, actually anybody can ask questions. So there is a Q&A panel. And also if any of you raise your hands, then we can actually bring you live in here as well. Also, because there aren't that many people today on the video, if once I introduce the topic and if any of you feel passionately about the topic and feel that you have something to contribute to it, we can actually bring you live on the video panel right at the beginning itself. So please don't be shy. Feel free to raise your hands, and we'll be happy to bring you in. Before I go and introduce the topic and Aneesh, I do want to sort of make one minor announcement, which is that for those of you who are entrepreneurs on the call, and usually quite a few of you are entrepreneurs who join these sessions, and if anybody is starting a company which is essentially using artificial intelligence in creative ways to solve some problem in building a SaaS business, then there is an initiative that we have launched along with IFC, which is International Finance Corporation, part of World Bank, to identify 10 promising companies for whom we will be making introductions across the globe, lots of free credits from a lot of partners, sessions with some of the global experts. So while actually technically today is the last date, and there has been an overwhelming response, but I wanted to use this platform also to announce this, that in case anybody is still interested, please do drop Naman a note on that. And again, we would still love to see you there. Now with that, let me come to the topic. So this week's topic is essentially around building a SaaS company which is focused towards India/Asia. And I'm actually more anchoring on Asia here. If you think about it, a lot of the SaaS companies and even the last few calls that we have had, we have focused on companies which were largely targeting the Western markets. And clearly we have seen many of those companies come out of India. Some of them have become pretty big as well. That being said, it is very clear that the Asian market is growing very rapidly. And we are seeing many green shoots of successful SaaS companies coming out of India targeting this market. Capillary was a pioneer, clearly in that space. But we have seen now other younger companies that includes CleverTap, MoEngage, Darwinbox, Yellow Messenger. And again, that list is becoming long, literally by the month, if not by the week. But as you think about Asia, it's a complex landscape, multiple countries, multiple languages. This is not about setting up a remote sales for one country, setting from India. And therefore, it's just a different beast to handle. And as we want to discuss this clearly, I mean, if you were to scan India as a country, I don't think there could be any better than Aneesh Reddy to be the anchor guest for today's session. I've known Aneesh for 7 years, learned a lot from him through the years on building SaaS companies from India. And they have certainly been the poster child in SaaS at large, and particularly for SaaS towards the Asia-centric go-to-market. With that, Aneesh, welcome to SaaS Talks number 4.
Alok, I don't know if I learned from you or you learned from me. I remember the first time I messaged you saying I have some questions. Let's can we meet, right? So uh, and and I think it's been an interesting journey the last 12 years for us. I, uh, and we've been very serendipitously lucky and fortunate, unfortunate, whatever you can call it. But happy to share my learnings today.
Fantastic. So I still want to ask people that, given that we don't have other video panelists, if there are people who are keen on this topic or have been around and particularly focus on Asia, please do feel free to raise your hand. Naman can actually bring you in into the panel if you would like to. But Aneesh, let me get started. At the time you started Capillary, there weren't a lot of examples. Actually, Manasaj has raised his hand. So, Naman, if you can bring him in as well. At the time you started, there weren't that many examples of SaaS companies, actually, period, to begin with from India. Doesn't matter targeting US or targeting Asia, actually, at that point. And when you were planning to grow or expand beyond India, just would love to understand, how did you make a decision as to which geography you want to take Capillary to? I'm sure that that's a question that you must have faced. I'm sure your VCs would have asked this question too. So I'm actually curious to go back in time and go back into the thinking and how you made the decision and which countries did you actually decide on at that point in time?
So this was, so we started in 2008. We really, 2008 of August, right? So August of 2008. And we decided on what we wanted to build in like February of 2009. So for 6 months, we just did a lot of primary research and spent a lot of time going store to store and malls and, asking people what should we build. And so the first 3-4 years for us, Alok, was all about India, right? So if you look at 9, 10, 11, was really all about India. And we really were set up at a time when, startups weren't cool. It was not like, we knew that there is a pot of a few $1 million at the end of this journey. We just got into it for the fun of it, right? So, and hence, what happened with us was quite serendipitous, that it was 2010, 11, and a bunch of our customers in Asia, we had a pretty good proposition, right? We were born in a recession, so we knew things would sell only if they made money for our customers. And that was a proposition which sold like hotcakes in 8, 9, 10, right? So in fact, we still sell the same story, right? So every time I've tried inventing something new, I go back to the old one saying this thing still works. Right? So a lot of our customers in India were multinationals in 2010, 11, right? So Pizza Hut, Puma, folks like that. And interestingly, they were the ones who said, look, why don't you come and present at our global brand boards, where we have franchisees or our colleagues from other countries as well. Or saying, look, one of my colleagues has moved to Singapore or to a Middle East. And, they were asking us, who do we use for this? And, would you be interested in doing something, right? So this was very early days, right? So till 2011, all the money we had raised was like 500K, right? So it was going, and our India business was doing very well. So our first customers internationally, whether it was a Singapore or a Middle East or a Dubai for that matter, came from our existing customer base.
Interesting.
So Pizza Hut and the Puma were the first two in Southeast Asia where, I think it was Pizza Hut first. And then as we were going there, we also wrote to the Puma folks saying, look, can you connect us to your team in Singapore? And they connected us, and then we went down there and said, look, here's what we do. It works for you in India. And, we're willing to try this out, pilot this out for you at a small fee for 3 months. If it works, then here are the commercials, right? So very similarly in Middle East, our third or fourth customer was this brand called Indian Terrain, a very popular menswear brand. And their CIO had moved from Indian Terrain to a company in Dubai, right? So it was a large retailer called Red Tag. And he just called up saying, look, guys, like, I know you don't have an office here, but I know your stuff works. So why don't you just come in and work with us here? and that story played out very well for us. China, many markets we opened that way, including markets like the UK,
Wow.
right? So so it was serendipitous, Alok. I think 2012 or 13 was the first time when we got venture capital in, crazy money raised. We raised 100 years of money. We had all the money we could burn at that point in time. That was when the serious question on saying, which is the first market you should open internationally came up.
Yeah.
And again, we did open the US. We already had a small presence in UK, and we had money for 100 years. We were burning 5 lakhs a month. We had 60 crores in the bank.
Wow.
And so we went the other way of saying, look, I think the fact is, look, they haven't been large software companies built on Asia. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Right. So someone on the call today or one of the Darwin Box, Yellow Messenger, Capillary types will have to break that myth. Right. Yeah. So in fact, so we then went and opened the US at that point in time. It was a very interesting learning experience for us, right? US, UK, Australia. These were the 3 developed markets that we opened back then. And I think we were definitely very early as a product. The product wasn't mature. The way Asia buys is very, very different from the way the West buys, right? The advantage we had in Asia was retail is a sunrise industry, right? So in the West, however, it's a very mature industry, right? So there's still folks growing. They're enough starting. There is still some growing, right? So it's a very different story to Asia, right? So in our case, we spent a few years in the US, UK, Australia, and then realized that the bang for the dollar was still in Asia for us. So I consciously took this call in 2015, 2014 to actually shut the Western markets and come back to Asia, right? So, and back then, I think pretty much everyone writers are saying, look, you can't scale to even 5-6 million in Asia, right? You'll start struggling at that.
Yeah.
And, we scaled to probably 6-7 times of that, right? So, but in hindsight, Alok, so it was a serendipitous journey. I would say, look, if you are, the US has more nuisance competition than even Asia.
Yeah.
Actually, in the pecking order, I'll put China first on nuisance competition, then the US, and then India, right? So, so if you are in a space that is very old, right, is very mature, I do think Asia is still young, right? For whether it's e-commerce, whether it's retail tech, or a lot of that stuff. I think I think that should decide your decision there. I don't know if you have a subsequent question on saying,
I have plenty of questions. Actually.
So that's the. So I would really say, look, if there are large behemoths, incumbents in your space in the US, it will take you a long time to figure that, right? So it might be better to Asia first, especially like when we opened the US, we that whole year was a year of credit card frauds in retail companies. So everywhere we went and knocked the door, the answer would be, look, we are replacing our POS terminal, so please come after money. Right? So I think timing, some of this were also quite important. Yeah.
So Aneesh, before I go to market, I actually have a question on product first.
Okay.
We have sometimes seen companies that when they build a product for the Asian market, some people will argue that product or product needs may end up being different than, let's say, more mature markets. And you, in fact, refer to the fact that your product was not ready for the US market at the time you explored it. Is there something I don't know whether there is such a sort of a generic answer. Like some people would argue that Asia is a do-it-for-me kind of a market versus like a US is a DIY kind of a market, etc. Anything from a product perspective that is actually different about Asia vis-a-vis, let's say, US?
Alok, I think, so obviously there are 2 things that come to mind on the product being different here and there, right? So, I mean, in Asia and in the West. So I think, I used to joke around in 2012 or 2013 that when an Indian company or an Asian company buys software, they're essentially buying a mobile number. So they will call you. They'll call you for everything, right? So, and it was very true, so we had software that ran in about 5,000-6,000 stores. It runs in about 50,000 stores now. So at the store level, it is self-service, right? People will use it themselves. Or it used to be self-service. It's still self-service.
Yeah.
At the head office level, they bought a phone number, right? So they would just pick the phone and call you for everything, right? So interestingly, what's happened over the years, Alok, and that shows up in, the way our teams have scaled. Although, once our customers have started realizing that this is something critical, right? Earlier, we had to go tell them, look, and we were selling SaaS at a time when, there was, we didn't know that SaaS existed. We didn't know Salesforce and some of that. I can talk about that story later. But, so this was cases where we would go tell them, look, this is the impact that we would deliver for you, right? And impact only comes from usage, right? Impact doesn't come from installing software, right? So, and until you showed that impact, people would not sign up for more stores, right? And ours was very pilot first, affordable cost, big impact type model, right? So, and that worked. Because of that, we had to do some initial, get you on the drug. But what's happened over the last 6-7 years now is that a lot of our customers have realized this is important, right? So they've then gone and hired their own loyalty managers, their own CRM managers. Like the last, let's say 3 years now, we actually have stopped incentivizing our sales teams on any services they sell.
Interesting.
So that switch to saying, look, we want to do self-serve has definitely gone up.
Right.
So it's a little bit of you have to cross that, and we don't do pilots anymore. Right? So we don't do this. We sign up full contracts right now on day one.
Got it.
So it's about crossing that chasm, as you call it, right? You need that initial set of early adopters for whom you're willing to do, get them up and going. And once they say, look, okay, this is working, then there will be a line of followers who will come behind them.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So I do think self-serve is big in Asia right now. For example, I must tell that our servicing teams have actually gone down by an order of, we have a 20% of the team now as we had 7 or 8 years ago on the customer success and servicing side. Right? That's because customers are using it themselves. In fact, now we have customers who come to us and say, no, just send us a demo link. I don't want you to demo it to us. Right? So that switch has happened. You can see that in a Mo Engage, in a Clever Tap, in our box, in a Yellow Messenger, right? So that's one big difference. So you will need some initial move to, get people to use your product. And then I think, self-serve is very possible in Asia.
Got it.
The second is, look, I think Asia just tends to buy Asia and mid-market or SMB in the US. Right? These two behave very similarly, right? So even mid-market or SMB in the US tend to want to not buy point solutions, but buy a spread, right? That one product which does a lot of things for me, I don't want to do integrations. Right? Which is why you see companies like Zenoti, do really well, right? Yeah. Or even a Zoho for that matter, or a Freshworks, and then your story now.
Yes.
Multiple products all pre-integrated, right? So that's a big difference, right? So in the US, for enterprise, if you're trying to target enterprise, you will find extremely brilliant point solutions, which then work with an Infosys or work with an Accenture or work with someone else, and the CIO at this big large 800-pound gorilla is willing to stitch all of them together, right? So that's the second big difference, right? So and what that means is that these companies will have extremely simple UIs because they're not trying to do too many things.
Good point.
They're really trying to do only one thing really well, really nicely, right? So as compared to us, let's say where we do 5 things, and hence this functionality and UIs are sometimes cross of each other, right? So I would say if Asia to US, your learnings are you need to have simple UIs. It needs to be as self-serve as you can from the get-go, right? And the third is don't go and try and sell your whole elephant. Probably selling just the one part of it is a better idea. And that's a story that's been proven by, if you look at Mindtickle, et cetera, all the people narrowed down. Even Gotfix for that, really narrowed down and saying, look, this is what we do. And they've as they went to the US, they did lower and lesser than doing more and more.
Very interesting, actually. I had not thought of it that way. Given the time, even though I have like a long list of questions at the moment in front of me that I want to ask, and I find that people are being a bit shy today. Normally, by this time, we begin to say, please don't be overawed by Anish's presence, or for that matter, Manasej or Sridhar's. So let me also welcome Manasej. Manasej was the founder of ThreadSoul, and now another company called Zapscale. And Sridhar, I think, is the founder of Loconav. But in case I'm introducing you wrong, please do chime in. So welcome to them as well. And to all the audience, just feel free to shoot your questions or just raise your hands, and we'll be happy to bring you in to ask any questions. But until people are asking questions, I'm just going to, I guess, continue with my question, and at least one that I was very keen to ask if I don't get a chance to ask any other question.
Hey, hi Manfred and hi Sridhar. I just saw you join in. Sorry about that.
So, which is that Asia is, I mean, when people talk about Asia itself is a large number of countries that we are talking of. Frankly, even Middle East is a large set of countries by itself too. And therefore, when you are building a go-to market across so many different markets, each of which may be tiny in their own right, how do you handle the uniquenesses of these different countries, the languages, the partnerships? So is the complexity of going to Asia actually a lot higher compared to other sort of higher scale single geographies or not? And if so, how do you handle that complexity?
Alok, so I think there's only one large scale single geography in the world, right? So it is the US. So let's not, Europe is not single, Southeast Asia is not, Middle East is not, right? So Australia is not large enough. Europe buys in bits and pieces, right? So it's the US, right? And the second one is China. And China, interestingly, is an incredibly hard market, right? So if we all feel India is about nuisance competition, and very early in life, I had one of our customers say, "Mere ghar mein bhi software engineer hai." And I said, "Look, this is the price for this thing. I need to pay that." China is like that, right? China and Vietnam are two other markets like that, where there is no dearth of tech, tech capability or builds. And so, look, if the US is not working for you, you have to figure other markets, right? So. And I would say, look, I think the advantage with Asia is it's very similar to India. So if something works in India, you can be more or less sure with like a 10%, 20% tweak, so it will work in an Asia, Southeast Asia or a Middle East, right? What you will need is multilingual, so you will definitely need multilingual, and you might need some endpoint customization, right? Endpoint customization, I mean, is if you're using Facebook or WhatsApp or something, then you will need to do that on a line or a WeChat, or your SMS gateways might change, or stuff like that might change. Facebook gets replaced with WeChat, stuff like that, right? So it's just a but so that side of the thing then becomes easier, right? The side that becomes harder is the GTM, right? It's and in some senses it is, like each of these markets will be like a $50 million, $100 million addressable market. So once you start getting to the 5, 6, 7 million in each of these markets, you will, have to figure out what is the next market I have to open. So it is kind of, think of it as, many mini 0 to 1s.
Yeah.
Right. So, and hence you will need like multiple founders in the company, or you will need multiple founders as in a good large founding team, so that when you move to other markets, your DNA moves with you, so it's definitely a lot more complex. In fact, that's one thing I regret quite a bit, that, I think the amount of effort that we put in a China or a Southeast Asia, had we put that in, or a Middle East, if we had put that in the US, it's like once you get to that first 5, 6 million in the US, then scaling from there is very easy.
Very true.
You know,
Very true.
on the other hand, in Asia, once you get to the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million in a country, you know कि ये हो गया है अभी. You know, this is like, you know, from here, you will grow at like 30% in that market or 35, 40% in that market at best. Right? So that's the big difference. And hence GTMs have to be very local to go with. We in fact have divided. Should I talk about that now, or if you want to get into detail on GTM, we can do that.
Actually, why don't we come to it, Aneesh? I actually want to pick up a question from an audience, and actually I'm going to throw it to Manasij in this case, which is that Manasij, I know that you built your company across. You also sold your solution across many parts of the world with ThreatSolve, and for the audience, Manasij's solution, the company ThreatSolve, was actually a very specialized optimization solution in the textile business. I know sort of I'm giving a very broad view, Manasij, so apologies if it's sort of not exactly correct. But the question is that did you see pricing being very different in Asian markets versus Western markets as you took your solution in different countries? And how did you think about pricing it differently, if so?
Hey, thanks a lot for putting me in the panel. I mean, I have listened to all the SaaS talks and I've always kept shut because I thought I was listening more. I could learn more. Here, I could not resist to actually put my points because ThreatSolve was predominantly an Asia business, right? We were in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Vietnam, China, Indonesia, wow, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, almost all Asian geographies. And the GTM was actually a very big concern. So we did solve it somehow, but just to answer this question, no, we kept the pricing exactly same in almost all geographies. And it was difficult to convince somebody in Sri Lanka that why they're paying exactly as much as somebody in UAE is paying. But we had to make sure that we don't change that specifically because our customers were all international. We were working for Nike, Adidas, Puma, so all these guys are highly international. So if you have differential pricing, you will have a very hard time explaining why it is so. So it's a tough thing to carry on the shoulder, but you got to keep it there itself. I would always recommend keeping a similar pricing if your business is internationally referenceable. But if your markets are completely insulated, so let's say, for example, if your Bangladesh market does not at all has any impact on, say, Chinese market, then of course you can have differential pricing. We did not have that luxury, so we had to take the harder choice.
Interesting. I'm actually though tempted for someone else to comment on this as well.
Can I go?
Yeah, please. Actually, Aneesh, I was going to ask you because a lot of people tell me that Middle East is 3 times India for pricing. So how do you price?
See, I think it eventually comes to, like in our case, our pricing is different for every market. We're transparent about it. We tell our customers also that. Right. So, like we work with, let's say, a lot of our customers in about 20 countries, 25 countries, and Southeast Asia, especially let's say Singapore and Dubai and Hong Kong, will end up having very similar pricing. India, Vietnam, will have very similar pricing. China and Indonesia will have very similar pricing. Right. So, and it's and what we've done, I think our story was all about a value down pricing, not a cost up pricing. Right. So, given it was value down, we would for the same brand, I have different pricing in different countries, and we justify it saying, look, cost of sales, cost of servicing you in a market, is very different, right? I mean, if you have folks based out of Singapore selling, they're going to be like 5 times more expensive than folks based out of India, right? So, or same applies to a Middle East. So, and we've seen customers being very okay about it, and that they know that even their salary in India was very different to their salary in Singapore. So, so they're open about it. I'm not seeing an issue on that.
Interesting. Sorry, I'm still tempted to ask one more question then on top of this, and maybe Manasij, you were referring to it also. During my SAP days also, I found this challenge, Aneesh, though, that when you have multinational clients, they try to game the system. So take a Tata Motors, which acquires a Jaguar Land Rover. Now, Jaguar Land Rover in UK was used to paying a certain price per license, whereas in India, Tata Motors pays a different price. Now, people want to game the system. They want to buy licenses for UK sitting out of India because they feel that they'll get a better price. Now, given that you had a Pizza Hut and others, and let's say your Indonesia price happens to be 30% higher than India. Now, Pizza Hut in Indonesia, will they buy in India or will they buy in Indonesia? And is there sort of some level of cannibalization because of that?
So look, we are a campaign tool and a loyalty system. So we do a lot with consumers at the end, right?
Right.
Your consumer endpoints have to be local. And that just basically means that you can't game our system.
Understand.
So it's as simple as that, right? So you can't, so if you have an extra store license and you want to use that somewhere else, that campaign won't go out, right? Because it will go out through an Indian gateway and it'll just fail, right? So,
got it.
So we've not seen that hit us, at least. Alok. We've had some cases where a global a customer has come and said, look, for all similar looking markets, I want a price which is same, and then we've gone this model of saying, look, I won't charge you one for each market, but here are 3 broad bands, right? This kind of a business, this kind of a market, here is a pricing metrics. This is for a second tier, this is for a third tier.
Got it. Sridhar, I know you have been very quiet, and I know that you guys are sort of the market leaders in your space in India. I just wanted to check, have you guys attempted going to any country outside India so far?
Hey, hi. We actually have recently started moving into some other emerging markets, particularly Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. So this actually started post-COVID, sometime around April. Yeah.
Then I'm curious, Sridhar. I mean, between Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, these are all very wide regions.
Right.
When you were thinking about it, I'm sure you must have asked the question, which country do we go to first outside India?
Right.
How did you solve for it, and which one did you decide? Actually, the how part is even more critical, and I'm just curious to hear the thought process there.
Right. See, in all honesty, we've been planning this for about a year and a half now. And then, of course, it just kept getting delayed for some or the other reason. Then, of course, COVID came around, during the lockdown. There was some bandwidth to pick up some of these things again. So I think we honestly, over the last 1.5 years, spent a lot of time on specific markets in Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa. And it was honestly based on the penetration and the reception of fleet software or fleet technology in particular markets, and that's honestly how we sort of picked it out. And this was effort that was done over the last 12 to 18 months before we launched. So I think we were fairly clear about which countries we wanted to get into. We had reasonable understanding of what were the price points that customers in those countries were looking to pay, were open to paying. Just continuing from your previous question, that we actually do have fairly differentiated price points for all these different markets, and it honestly was based on a fair amount of research that went into speaking to transport fleet owners, understanding if what are the typical type of vehicle movement. So in our industry, the longer distance the vehicle movement, more is the need for a solution like this.
Got it. One question that multiple people now seem to have asked here, and by the way, I should also add that anybody on the panel here can also ask questions to others. So this is meant to be a discussion. So if Manasij, you have a question that you want to ask others, you should feel free to do that too. But I want to pick up one question that has come on the Q&A panel here, which is about the building of teams. And I think this question is more right now talking about market localization. And I'm assuming that this is both about product and can also be about the go-to-market, both. Do you end up building teams in every country? Do you hire locally for everything? Or how do you decide what stays in the mothership versus what do you put in the sort of individual fiefdoms, if I may call it that way? How do you make that decision? Which function do you put where? And anybody can take this question. Feel free. I mean, whoever has a view, please do.
Sure, I can answer this
Sure.
because actually we spent some time on this last few weeks. On this dilemma, we spoke to a lot of the SaaS companies that have been through this journey the last few years. So I think for us, what the sort of strategy that we zeroed down in on is that only start with remote sales, and only once you have 2-3 live customers or partnerships, then you can look at starting to hire local sales executives or local sales managers. But don't we're definitely not going live with the local sales team till we have some local traction.
Aneesh or Manasaj, any view on this question?
I would agree with Sridhar. As I mentioned, even in our case, Singapore, Middle East, even China for that matter, we did open these markets remotely, right? So I think, and I strongly do believe that for a lot of these markets, it's first important to get your initial lead source right. Go as a founder, sell, close the first few deals, right? Get a few referenceable customers. Right, your 0 to the first customer or the second customer is like always inevitably hard. The 2 to 10 or the 2 to 20, I feel, is the easy one, and then 20 to scale is again another different paradigm, right? So that's the. So I would agree with Sridhar. I think the first 2-3 customers in a market, I do think almost need like a founder like sales, right? Going there and saying, "Oh, I'm the founder. Don't worry, I'll get this done," type stuff. Right? So. But once you cross that, is where I think you need a local team, right? Especially as your deal values grow. Like it would be very hard to do a large deal without a local presence, at least a regional presence, if not a local presence.
Right.
Just a follow-up question on that. How do you solve for the language barrier in remote sales for these markets?
Right. So you go with multinational customers. Simple answer. That's the best way. I haven't seen very local customers. Even if the Spock that you're dealing with is an Indian or understands English well, and eventually it will break down somewhere. So I would say go with multinationals. Because the employees there generally have to speak good English. Just given that they have to deal with their head offices as well. So I would kind of go with that.
Manasaj, did you have anybody outside India, or did you manage your global operations completely out of India?
No, we had people in different countries. You can't manage it from sitting in India, something like a Vietnam or a Cambodia or a China for that matter. So our process of GTM plus people was actually combined. So let me just take you through the process in like just 2 minutes exactly, because I know it's mostly Aneesh's discussion. So
no, not at all.
Please
go ahead. Yeah, please.
I'd love to learn as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so thanks a lot for that. Let's see if that's really worth it. So we started with Sri Lanka first, and then we basically created a playbook, and the playbook looked like this: that if I want to conquer a specific country, I need to find out the most shining jewels of that country first, and then use an account-based marketing to go into that specific account and find out the top executives whom I will actually go and spear. That's the founder level job. So you will choose somebody in, say, Sri Lanka. We choose MAS, which is the title sponsor for Sri Lankan's cricket team shirt. So they're a $1.4 billion company. So I found out their CEOs, 3 CEOs. I felt them personally myself. Then I did the same thing for 2 other companies. Once we have got the first few 5-6 companies who are the shining jewels up there, then you basically come in to do a much more larger scale spectrum marketing. So what we would do is we'll basically do a title sponsorship of a specific event, and then we'll basically showcase our entire products and entire suites of things. And that's the time in which we'll actually start looking for local partners. And we've always harped on one thing very importantly, that Indians go everywhere. And Indians, most of them, a lot of them who go to different countries, they also learn to speak that language. So we had a guy in China who was actually Indian, but a complete Chinese. He could speak complete Chinese. Had married a Chinese woman. Similarly for Vietnam, similarly for Cambodia, similarly for Bangladesh. So we had found that niche to work very well. So start with an ABM. Make sure that the first few jewels are very much in your necklace. Then you put up a large-scale marketing system to work and do the entire picture from there, and hire people locally on the ground, because that's impossible to do it from India. But when we came to doing the taking care of countries like Singapore or let's say UAE, Dubai, or even South Africa, UK, US, Germany, Spain, which actually eventually went to 43 countries. So in that case, we could do all the stuff remotely, because these are multinational customers. They could speak English most of the time, and the recall for what you did in one meeting did not evaporate because of the language barriers and stuff. So our go-to-market strategy always hinged on these three parameters: account-based marketing, large-scale on-ground marketing, and then finally having people to take care of geographies themselves.
Very interesting. That's a very, very interesting approach. I'm curious to throw in a question, even though nobody on the Q&A thing has asked. I think two of you now have talked about China. And at least in my own mind, China is a conundrum. During my SAP days, at least I felt that we burnt a shitload of money in China and not that much came out of it. I mean, at least the amount of investments in China was about 20-25x of that of India. And the revenue actually, frankly, was just similar to India, actually sometimes probably even lower at the time I left, I remember. And I think very few people have actually attempted China. We talk about Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, Australia also, but not many people have ventured into China. If you have to build a business in China, what are some of the do's and don'ts in learning? And again, whoever wants to take this question.
Can I take a 2-minute thing and then we can
Sure.
So I always said that we will go to China by not going to China. So what I mean by that is that China is extremely hard, very expensive. If you want to do marketing campaigns in China, good luck. You're going to spend exactly similar amounts of money as you would spend in the US. But then if you look at China, there are two places around it which are very interesting. One is Hong Kong, other is Taiwan. These are all Chinese-led businesses. Most of the Chinese money is in Hong Kong and Taiwan mostly. So go to these places. These are very, very English spoken, very friendly for that perspective. And then from there, you attack the mainland. Attacking the mainland first makes it very difficult because it's very expensive and very big. It's actually a continent, right? I mean, you have 15 cities which are more than 20 million population. So you can't really get to that country so quickly. So we targeted Hong Kong and targeted the Taiwan. And from there, we actually made connections to start going into Beijing, Chengdu, all the places in China. So to me, the gateway to China was always Hong Kong. There's one problem which we saw very clearly doing a SaaS business in China. If you don't have a server in China, then there is a hell of a problem. So we needed to we ended up incorporating an entity in China and then have its own servers and everything else. But it was a difficult thing. And if one country made it most expensive and most difficult, that would be China.
Can I go on, Alok? I don't know if you have more questions.
No. I don't know. Yeah, would love for you to answer on this. Yeah.
The reason we opened China was we felt the other monolith market other than the US.
Yeah.
Is China, right? I mean, and that made us feel that we should open China, and we went ahead and opened it. And to our luck, we also had VF brands, which is Lee, Wrangler, and they're the world's largest apparel manufacturer. And we work with them in Asia. They took us in there to China, right? So we had initial customers, we had all that stuff, right? So now China is, I would say, why you should go to China. Because I think it improves. China is ahead of the world. I know I might get killed, given the China sentiment on this, but guys they're amazing, right? So their adoption of tech, they are ahead, right? I mean, the US look like zombies, and we don't look like we're even born, right? So with regard to the kind of tech you see in China, so at least like today, I think if we have we probably have a best-in-class product than what we do globally, and I would say a large part of that has happened only because we went to China 5 years ago.
Wow.
Especially if you're doing anything on the consumer side, they're miles ahead. Like we learn more from the one product manager or the small 7-member tech team I have there than I say than a 3-4 times sized team I have here. They are just ahead. And what China is going to do, everyone's going to copy, right? Like WhatsApp is a poor copy of WeChat. Like, let's agree to that. A very poor copy at that, right? So, and they're all heading there, right? So, like people you would speak to on product managers in WeChat in China now, the same guy moves to WhatsApp as a product manager in the valley. Right? So it's kind of like that, right? So one is if you're keen on building a product for a long time, I do think having a place in China is extremely is very good, but it is an extremely competitive market. It's just crazy. Now the trick I would say, which we figured very late, right, is again go behind the multinationals in China. This is you're not sharing any recording of this, right, Alok?
We do record, but if you think that we should not release it, we'll not release it.
So the trick is this, right? We've seen multinationals in China love multinational vendors.
Right.
Period.
Yes.
Right. So, and local companies in China love local Chinese vendors. Period. Right. So, and that's a learning that took us very, very long to figure. Because the fact is, only 20% of the market in China will be multinational. Majority is local Chinese companies. Right. But that 20% is probably 5 times the size of India.
Wow.
Right. So, and that's been a late learning for us. Now, once you do that, then things are a little simpler, right? So, then people want an international product. The point that Mansich made on servers is very, you need local servers. There is a real China firewall. You can't get into it from India, right? So you will need something local. So it is a big investment. I think it breaks even only, at 3-4 million of spend into the market. I would slightly disagree with Mansich that look, the real business is in Shanghai and Beijing. It's not in Hong Kong, and at least if you're trying to do anything consumer, just the way China is structured, if you're doing manufacturing, probably Hong Kong and Taiwan might be the way to go. But if you're doing anything consumer, the Chinese government just makes sure that it's all inside, right? It's all inside the mainland, right? So, yeah.
No, completely agreed with you, my friend. I mean, absolutely agreed. The fact that we found the options to move into China through Hong Kong or through Taiwan, or actually for some certain places, we've moved into China through Manila because of multinational vendors. That's the cheaper version. And I am completely with you that if you can spend $3-4 million, you might actually get a very good bang for your bucks in China. We never had that money.
For us now, that business is profitable. The other thing is we have a small tech team in China. I didn't mention that, right?
Yeah.
So we have a couple of product managers. We have almost a 14-15 member tech team in China, because without that you'll get nowhere, right? It's the only place outside India where we actually have a dev center.
Actually, I remember, Aneesh, I had gone to one of your annual employee conference that you had done. It's the only place for a startup from India where I saw like 40-50 Chinese employees. I mean, you had a large number of Chinese employees that I got to see, which was very impressive. Let me take a different question. And Shri, I think of Factors.ai is the one asking this question, which is that, can you build a $100 million revenue company from India based on Asia as a market? I'm expanding his question, but, and this is of course a SaaS company that I'm talking of. So do you think it's feasible to build now?
I do think you will see one in the next 10 years. Probably it'll be us or a Yellow Messenger or a Darwinbox or many other, or a MoEngage for that matter, right? I would still put MoEngage, CleverTap as Asia first companies, just given their revenue mix.
Of course.
And some of that. So I think yes, I do think that you can build a $100 million Company. You'll have to, but it's going to be that much harder, right? You will I've had a lot of people who've known us for many years joke that, look, had you just moved to the US, you would have been like 10 times larger than your size. And we do believe that's true. It's not entirely false, because each of these markets is a new 0 to 1. Yeah. Right. And that means that, it's going to be a lot of, and the reason I'm saying 10 years is, I think once you get to the 30, 40, then you will grow at the rate at which the market is growing, or at 2x the market is growing. Because it's just going to be, you'll have to educate people. Paying power is low, so some of those are definite chaoses, right? So, but I do believe that in ad tech, in Mobi has done that. They've shown that, look, on Asia you can build multi-$100 million type business. So I'm hopeful, but it is harder than doing something in the US. In fact, I keep joking around that we are the curse of being successful in Asia.
I think it's a good curse to have. I have one micro question, again on the go-to-market.
Mansi, I don't know if you want to answer that question as well.
No, I am not qualified to answer the question, my friend. So pass from my side.
Which is that, as you are building Asia-centric go-to-markets, clearly you talked about the fact that large teams, when you're closing larger deals and you go beyond the first few founder-led deals, then you need to have local teams. Fair enough. And I'm assuming that includes combination of sales and pre-sales particularly. But if I focus on demand gen as a function,
right,
is it feasible to actually run your entire demand gen engine for Asia out of India? Or do you think that even the demand gen engine needs to be local?
Mansi, do you want to take that, or shall I go? Up to you.
It's your show, Aneesh. Why don't you do it first? I'll just come in.
No, it's not my show. I really want to learn what you say on this one.
We'll keep saying this to Aneesh. Go ahead, Aneesh.
So I think initially, Alok, when you're trying to get your first few customers, I think running it out of India does work, but that doesn't give you scale.
Okay.
Right. So because again, if you're going the multinational route, you don't need local language or any of that.
Right.
So it doesn't. So you can run, inside sales, inbound, outbound, a bunch of that from here. Right. So now what we have seen work well for us is in each of these markets, right? Whether it's in Indonesia or whether it's in Malaysia, we or China for that matter, or even a Middle East. We do, once we get to a certain stage, we hire a local SDR or a local inside sales rep.
Yeah.
Right. Because what happens is, when you're, calling, or when you're typing something in, or, you eventually, if you want to really grow large in that market, all these markets are, there are conglomerates who are very large in each market. If you want to enter into them, you will need to get in through those routes. So I do believe that DG initially can be out of India, but eventually, if you want to scale to the $100 million company that someone was talking about, you will need to have local DG. Local DG, at least on the on the outbound side and even on the inbound side. Like our PR agencies are local in each market.
Got it.
Right. Yes. Content. We're now realizing that if you can do local content, it's really good. Right.
Yes.
So stuff like that. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we did for our case was, for all international stuff, we had it centered in India. But for local stuff, we had a local PR company, local marketing company, local SDRs, local salespeople. Because then you can actually get the entire picture to deliver the best results from our positions.
Got it. The only question that I think we have not covered at all in the Q&A panel is the last one. I'll read again from Sri. It's actually unfortunately addressed to us as I'm reading it now, which is that, do you see expansion potential and investment into Asia-focused SaaS from an investor perspective? There is a comment there saying that the current investment thesis is primarily US-focused SaaS. And actually, I would love for Aneesh to comment as well, because Aneesh, you are a very, very avid angel. I know that pretty much every SaaS entrepreneur comes to you for an angel check too. But I'll give my perspective on this, is that, to be honest, I think we are learning, Sri, on this. I don't think these answers stay static. In full transparency, when I started investing, my initial answer was only US. And I mean, Naman is smiling at me because this question keeps getting asked, at least inside our firm, now every quarter, if not more. And I think as more and more companies are scaling and the Asian market is expanding, I feel that the answer, I mean, so first of all, is the answer yes or no? I think it's not a no. In the sense that Asia-focused SaaS companies will come out of India, and I think they will be successful. There's no question. I think you have to then go micro a little bit into which spaces, which markets, because maybe there are certain markets where it may not be feasible, but many other markets where I think it will be feasible. And particularly when you look at retail, financial services, and a couple of other verticals, I'm beginning to find that the market is so large in Asia as well, that there is actually a potential to build Asia-focused companies. Still, I still find it easier to invest in US-focused companies, partly just because I think I understand that market more, having sold in US. But there is no question in my mind that Asia-focused companies will come, they will flourish, and actually I think they will become very big as well in the near future. But Aneesh would love your...
My answer to that, Sri, is I've raised a lot of money, right? So, and we are Asia-focused. We've, I'm on the board of Darwinbox. They're doing extremely well. Mowing Age, CleverTap opened up US many years ago, didn't work out. They came back. They've raised a ton of money. So I think, actions speak more than words, right? So, if people are seeing growth, if people are seeing a large market, they'll put money anywhere here. So it's a simple thing. And at least, I think there were a lot of questions on folks saying 5 years ago, can you even build a $5 million business in Asia? We have enough stories now, right? So I think it's just a matter of time. There is enough money chasing Asia-focused place. In fact, I know of investors now whose thesis is you'll never win in the US, so let's just play here.
True. Folks, I want to be cognizant of time because we promised that we'll stop sharp at 6. So I want to thank Aneesh, Manasaj, Sridhar, and actually all the people who are on the call listening to this thing.